Wrestling Bits. Subscribe now.
So let's just start off with some of the challenges you faced growing a company during the pandemic, which you've actually succeeded as. So, what are some of the challenges you face and how are you able to overcome them?
Well, I'd say probably the biggest challenge, of course, is that with the pandemic, we were not allowed to hold any events with an audience. And, if anybody that's familiar with professional wrestling, the audience is integral to the art of professional wrestling as the performers themselves. So it forces you to have to be very, very creative. And I've got to commend everyone out there, all the organizations that have continued to operate and try to provide some kind of content and still produce that television on a weekly basis in spite of not having an audience. It's not easy. So, for us, we do a really good job of telling logical stories, and which allowed us for a very lengthy amount of time to go back and do a lot of recaps and encapsulating a lot of stories and allowing the audience to become more familiar with the characters and the motivations and all of that. So it was a positive for a while, and then it got to be a bit of a creative challenge as it kept going on. So.
Now, one thing that I really do love about OVW that sets it apart from everybody in the world, this is the only state-accredited trade school. I like that you have a philosophy that teaches people how to get out of wrestling, which I think is something that a lot of companies kind of try to hide and don't confront. So what would be your number one advice in teaching somebody to get out of wrestling?
It would be that, to try to find another passion. The one big thing to be successful in any pursuit where you're going to live a life that others don't live is that you have to be passionate about wanting to pursue it, because it's going to require you to some would say make sacrifices, but if it's something that you're passionate about, they're not sacrifices. But when you are so focused and so passionate about in that singular pursuit, that when you come to the end of it, if you don't have some kind of skills, some kind of information that allow you to redirect that passion and continue forward, then a lot of people flounder. I mean, I know that the NFL just recently created a program basically teaching the NFL football players how to function in life without being an NFL football player. When their on the field career comes to an end, how they can continue to go forward and still live a full life without that singular focus. Because let's face it, I mean, most of those players have been playing since they were small children, in Pee-wee football leagues on up through, junior high school, into college, and then finally into the NFL. And when that on the field career comes to an end, that they're completely directionless. So even the NFL has acknowledged that is a problem, a situation that they needed to address. And with the trade school, I'm hoping that we can do the same with the young men and women, not only giving them additional skills and information that would make them better performers in the ring, but also give them skills and information that will allow them to continue to be an asset within the world of sports entertainment and broadcasting, when that career, because it's not a matter of if it'll end, it's a matter of when it will end inside that ring, that they'll still be able to do something and be involved and utilize that experience that they've gained by being an in-ring performer to, maybe step the product up in a completely new direction.
Now, what are some of the warning signs that you look out for, or that you've noticed that is kind of an indication to you that it's time to maybe counsel somebody on getting out of wrestling? What do you look for in a talent when it looks like their time may be done?
The biggest concern that I have is watching a talent let professional wrestling become who they are and not what they do. The more that I see that happen with someone, the more I get concerned, and the more I try to step in and direct or advise, because it's never healthy, and it inevitably it always ends bad. I could tell you numerous stories where I've seen where young men and women have allowed, their careers to become exactly who they are, and defines and encapsulates their entire persona. And when that does, eventually come to an end, they can't function. They don't know what to do, and it's ended very badly in a couple of situations I've seen.
OVW is now on 7 different networks, over 100 million homes, and now a deal with Game Plus. You guys are doing so great. Training Tour becoming a national company now. So I want to get your perspective of what makes a national champion. I know Jesse Goddard is the guy that you've picked as the national champion. What is it about a talent that you see that makes you think that they can be a national champion?
It really, with professional wrestling, the main thing that I think that one, that the wrestling business itself, the performers have gotten away from, and I think that Jesse really gives me the ability to do, and that is that he has a very strong personality. He has a very strong persona. He has a very strong character. You can, let's face it, you can turn to your friends and family and you could describe Jesse Goddard in a sentence or less to them. You could say, you need to watch this guy. He's A, B, C, D, E. And they'll know exactly who you're talking about, what kind of a person he is. And that in and of itself is why I chose Jesse. He carries himself with class. He, has a definable personality and character, both inside and outside the ring. He's incredibly professional on all levels. And, I couldn't be happier, because I know that, for us, creating that national heavyweight title, it was integral that I had a performer that really epitomized that. I mean, if you think back in the days of, the NWA World Heavyweight title, and, the first thing you think of is either a Harley Race or a Ric Flair, guys that really, epitomized what it was to be the World Heavyweight Champion. And Jesse does do that. He epitomizes that. That's the highest level for us right now, with OVW is that National Heavyweight Championship, and he characterizes that. When you envision a guy who carries a title like that, you envision a Jesse Goddard.
I really like what you say about describing somebody in a sentence or less. That's such a great way of putting how to connect with an audience and whatnot. But wrestling today, even at its highest level, has a cult following. It's more
Sure.
of a following that it's not what the following was when you were in wrestling, where even my friends who didn't watch wrestling, they knew what head was. They had the head dolls. So in terms of today's wrestling, what needs to be unlocked? Do you think it can be controlled in terms of cultivating a mainstream audience? Do you think it's something wrestling needs to wait for? Or how do you think you guys can control it?
Well, it's not, we can't control it. The performers can control it.
Sure.
In professional wrestling, at the end of the day, it has been and always will be the wrestler's business. And they're the artists. It's reacquainting them with and getting them back in the understanding of what it is that they're really trying to sell to an audience, and what an audience is really wanting to buy. Unfortunately, over the last 10, maybe 15 years, the talent have become more focused on selling what they do to you, the audience. And let's face it, you don't buy a ticket to watch what they do. You buy a ticket to see who they are and why they do it. Because the what they do is inconsequential in comparison to who they are and how much you can relate to them and why they did it. Because the why is what always makes you happy. The why is what makes you angry and frustrated and wanting to see justice done. The who is so absolutely important, because you, back in the day when you were, just a wrestling fan. I mean, when you were wanting to get your friends to watch it, you didn't turn to your friends and go, "Hey, you've got to watch this show. This guy can do these really incredible moves." You always turned to your friends and said, "Hey, there's this guy on this show, and he's A, B, C, D, E." And that was what motivated them to watch, was, "Oh, I got to watch this guy. I got to see what he's going to do." And that is the most important thing. The more we can connect with an audience through the who and the why of professional wrestling, the more we will become a more of a mainstream audience again. You know, we'll pull Mr. and Mrs. Walmart back to it.
Let's get the Walmart people back in wrestling. I don't have a problem with that.
That's right. Yeah.
You can sell some shoes and stuff like that. That'd be great.
That's right.
So now, in your opinion, then, what do you think, outside of OVW, of course, what do you think is the gold standard in wrestling in terms of any company in the world that maybe you look at like they're doing it right, they're on the right track in terms of their philosophy, how they present their product?
You got to say WWE. I mean, you have to. No one can outdo WWE. WWE is WWE, and you know, and one of the main reasons that it is what it is because they literally have decades of experience. You know, you have Vince McMahon at the helm, and prior to that, you had Vince Sr., and prior to that, you had you know, Vince's grandfather. It's been, you know, passed down from family member to family member. And with that kind of experience and with that kind of understanding of just exactly what it is and what they're selling and why they're selling it, you can't deny it. I mean, look at the, you know, the virtual audience that they've created, and how it truly has transformed their product that they had only a few months prior, where they had nobody there at all. And you know, now with that virtual audience, it gives it a different feel. It gives it a different, you know, environment that you're watching on TV, and makes it much more enjoyable. So, you know, they've always been on the cutting edge and understand what they need to do, and have always been a step ahead of everyone else.
Well, and now they have the WWE Network, and given how open they are to working with outside promotions and whatnot, and obviously OVW used to be a developmental territory to WWE. I know NXT's there, but it's more of a kind of a televised product that's more focused on ratings and whatnot. Do you think there's an opening for somewhat of a working relationship, even though you guys are growing in your own right? Do you think that OVW being somewhat of a working relationship with WWE is in the cards?
Oh, I think eventually, yes. Because I think that I think not just with the WWE, but with AEW and other national organizations, I think that we could provide a value. If you think of the amount of an investment that WWE has to make into a talent that they bring into NXT to develop them, it's immense. Where, you know, if they were to bring talent from OVW to the NXT, it would accelerate the, you know, the developmental process for them from NXT on up exponentially. You know, we're not going to just teach a performer how to wrestle or how to perform in front of an audience. We're going to teach them how to operate a camera, how to set the lights, how to run the audio, how to produce, how to direct, you know, so that now as the performer in the ring, they're going to perform even better on television, because they now understand and can relate to why it's so important that they're in the right spot for that camera shot. You know, you're not going to need to take the time to explain or teach that to them. They're going to be able to hit the ground running. And outside of WWE or AEW, NXT, OVW is the one place left that you can still, as a performer, get experience on live TV. We produce our show every Tuesday night live here in Louisville, Kentucky, and locally and regionally. And we do that for the express reason that if you're a performer, you know, you need that experience prior to maybe getting an opportunity with WWE or AEW, because if you don't have that, you're thrown in the deep end of the pool, and it's sink or swim on live national TV. And if you don't have that chance prior, then you don't know, you know, how best to capitalize on that and exploit the fact that you're on that television time with the cameras and with the lights and the sound, and communicating to the directors and the producers so that things don't get missed, to the agents. Whereas if you've had that experience here on this level, then you show up there and you're miles ahead of everyone else.
And what I also love about that is, to your philosophy, that is something that a wrestler can slowly start to learn in terms of transitioning outside of wrestling and maybe becoming a producer afterwards.
Yes. Two of the best examples I always give, and were really a motivation and an inspiration for me to want to do this. Tommaso Ciampa's wife, she was a competitor on Tough Enough 2. and she was awesome, but she got cut. But on her own, through her own motivation, she came back as a intern with MTV when we did Tough Enough 3. WWE ended up hiring her as a backstage producer. She garnered experience and knowledge from working in that environment, and then went on to become a television producer for ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, all the major networks. And then a young man named James Long, he had came here to OVW as an in-ring performer, wanting to just be a wrestler, taught himself how to edit, how to do lighting, operating a camera, was so talented. I helped him get hired by Impact Wrestling as one of their production crew. And then now he is a major producer with WWE and NXT. He is one of their top guys. So he's literally has a whole different career, that has went on for years now, all because of his being able to teach himself those skills, and puts him a step above, another television producer, because they don't have that understanding or that in-ring experience that he does. So he has more of a connection to what it is that he's trying to produce and create, because he's physically been in the ring and experienced it.
That's really awesome.
And yeah, so it's, I'm really hoping that, by giving these young men and women these skills, it'll help them with their in-ring careers and increase their chances of being able to capitalize on any and all opportunities that come their way. But more importantly, it will give them the confidence and a direction to continue to pursue their passion within wrestling or entertainment or broadcasting in ways that they couldn't even have imagined.
Now, you've had some strong words for wrestling fans in the past. You had this clip that went viral in 202016 saying you generally hated wrestling fans. I don't hate them.
Yeah, I don't hate them. I hate that they get so, opinionated. That's what I
Sure, I completely understand. Well, 4 years later in 2020, some would argue it's gotten even worse in terms of the intensity. I think with AEW, it created this dynamic that I didn't see coming, that it made people more divided, where I thought it would bring wrestling back to the days of the Monday Night Wars. But having said that, where do you see the conjecture in wrestling in 2020? What are your thoughts on today's wrestling fans compared to that time?
The sad thing for them, I think, is it's not as much fun. And the reason it's not as much fun is that they unfortunately have access to way too much information. And, and I think in that viral clip, I stated that, one of the truest mantras is that familiarity breeds contempt. And the more you become familiar with a topic, the more contemptuous you become of it, because you now feel, because of your access to the information, that you know as much as the person who is actually performing it. And at the end of the day, in order to have any real genuine knowledge about any topic or subject, you have to have information, and then you have a commensurate amount of experience. I always use the analogy that if you wanted to become a doctor, you're going to attend medical school anywhere from 8 to 12 years, depending on your specialty. The minute you graduate from medical school, you're not a doctor. You've spent 8 years acquiring information, but you're still not considered a doctor, not until you complete a certain number of years of residency, where it's supervised experience. And then once you've completed that, you get the title of being a doctor, because you've gotten and acquired a certain amount of experience that goes along with all the information that you now have. And that makes you a doctor. And the same goes with any other topic, but especially with professional wrestling. It unfortunately, it makes it not as much fun for the fans, because they, I think they lose some of the magic that used to be there. A good example would be if you were to go and watch a magician, and while he's sawing the woman in half, he's looking over his shoulder at the audience to you, and he's going, "Hey, don't worry. She's got her feet tucked up here, and there's another girl down here, and their legs are out there. They're fine. They'll be all right. It's no big deal." Well, now it's not fun anymore, because there's no mystery to it. There's no allowance for you to have some type of suspension of disbelief. No different than if you went and watched Spider-Man, and the entire time you were watching the movie, he was breaking the fourth wall and looking at the camera and explaining what he was doing and how the special effects were working and things of that nature. It would just not be nearly as entertaining. So and social media is not the problem. The internet is not the problem. It is the talent's use of social media and the way that they handle it that has become the problem. They've allowed their own insecurities to drive their willingness to share information because they don't want to feel like they appear a certain way. So they try to spin it by, saying, well, don't worry, that's not real. Or, hey, it's only fake when I lose. It's real when I win, type of thing.
Right. Now,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, it's really introspective in terms of, I do agree in terms of how talent interacts with social media. One thing I see is that they tend to spend too much time on the negativity. And I think there needs to be more perspective that the trolls, quote unquote, are just 1% or just a smaller percent of the grander scheme. And if you just focused on the positive aspects of social media, I think if more people did that, it would be a better place.
I agree. And for you, the audience, I give this advice all the time to the talent in OVW. It's the fact of the matter is that if I sell you, and successfully do so, the fact that, back in the day I was insane and I spoke and had a relationship with a mannequin head. Well, you don't want to see me go on social media and now not be that guy. You don't want me to, be any different. You don't want just Al Snow. You want crazy Al Snow that talks to a head because that's what you bought a ticket to see. You understand? And to that point, in recent years, everybody has really just, trumpeted Matt Hardy when he first started doing the broken gimmick. And they were like, oh, he's such a genius. He never breaks character. When he does podcasts and he does social media, he stays in character. He's so brilliant, And now MJF, I think, who, he stays in character 100% of the time. And, that's nothing new. We've always done it in wrestling because, in wrestling, that's what it's required. When I was really over with the head, I remember traveling by myself, leaving an arena, going to get something to eat, and walking in and getting dinner for both myself and the head, and sitting there in the restaurant having a conversation, arguing with the head over why they weren't eating, and and being asked to leave numerous places because we were making the other customers uncomfortable, and I'm like, well, they're making us uncomfortable. So, it was hard, but it was important because, at that point in time in my career, if you'd have asked 9 out of 10 people, they would have all sworn that I was completely insane. And let's face it, I mean, if you think back, there were some of the things that I did in the context of wrestling were ridiculous. I mean, they were completely outside the norm, but nobody didn't believe it, and no one was never like, oh, what's he doing? Why would he do that? They were like, okay, that makes sense. He's completely out of his mind, and that's the key, is that as long as you were able to believe in who I was, you were able to believe in everything I did. And there was some pretty crazy, wacky stuff that I did. So it was.
Did you ever get a discount at least for head from some of these restaurants that, as either a senior citizen for head or it's a minor? I mean,
no. And we certainly did have some interesting conversations, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Now, okay, that tells me a lot because one thing that I always loved about your career, you had so much fun, it seemed, as a pro wrestler. You had chemistry with everybody from The Rock to an inanimate object. But behind the camera, you've had a very long, lengthy, successful career. You seem to be very passionate about that as well. So what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy being in front of the camera? Does that give you more of a rush, or behind the camera developing more?
I would say, they're both equal, because it's both, they both have their challenges, and they're both equally creative, and they're both very rewarding. Nothing makes me happier than to watch, the people that I train, that I develop to go on and be successful, And it's just as much, their success is just much as mine. To me, I could not be more thrilled to watch them succeed and achieve their goals and their dreams. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can, sincerely, to try to make sure that they have the skills to do that. Because the way that I was brought into professional wrestling back in the day, I mean, I tell people all the time, it was easier to become a made man in the mafia than it was to become a professional wrestler. And people were held directly accountable for who they trained and how well they trained them. And I still hold that to this day, that, if I train you, you're carrying my name, and my name is the most valuable thing I have. It's quite honestly, it's the only thing I have. I've spent 38 years building that name. And so I'm now going to do everything I can to help you succeed, because otherwise, if you fail, that now starts to hurt my name. And I can't have that. Not at this point. It's very much a mutual situation for us both, that I'm going to do what I can to help you succeed, and succeed as far as you can go. And in turn, it helps to create my legacy, and helps me live on beyond my career.
Thank you so much, Al. That's very informative stuff. I want to congratulate you on your success with OVW. I think it's awesome that you guys are growing and your several TV deals and being available in these homes. So I just want to congratulate you. Keep doing what you're doing, and you're doing something very positive. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to leave the wrestling business even better than what it was when I came in. And believe me, it's, regardless of what people say, it's an awesome business. I've been blessed to get to do what I've loved to do for as long as I've gotten to do it. And all I can do is maybe help other people get to do it the same.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Alfred.